welcome. Tonight we have a horrifying and original Christmas story. It's called Beware the Cry for Help. Also, thank you so much to those of you who have already subscribed. It really means the world to me. So let's get into it. It was Christmas morning as Jenny ripped open the crinkly wrapping paper decorated with smiling elves dressed in green and red sweaters. As the paper fell away, revealing the present inside, she screamed and jumped up and down in delight. There was the latest smartphone. Jenny grinned and rushed over to her parents to hug them while they exchanged glances over her head. Her mother laughed and said, "It wasn't us, it was Santa," while rubbing her daughter's back and kissing the top of her head. "I'm 15, Mom," Jenny answered with an edge in her voice. "Don't believe in Santa." "Shh," replied her mother, with her head tilted and staring at Jenny with a "don't ruin it for Riley" expression as she adjusted her thick light blue robe and pulled it tighter around herself. "Mom, I can see you, and I'm 10, not stupid. I don't believe in Santa either," Jenny's brother Riley called out as he dug through the remaining presents to find one with his name on it. He spotted a small box which had the same elf-themed wrapping paper that Jenny's smartphone came in. He tore into it to find the earbuds he had been asking for all year. "Oh my God, Mom, I can't believe it!" He stared down at the package, then up at his mother and father, looking as pleased as a kid with his first piece of chocolate. Their parents chuckled and headed into the kitchen to begin making pancakes, bacon, and eggs with cheddar cheese and chives. As the smell of cooking and coffee filled the air, Jenny and Riley sat together on the black leather couch, trying to break through the clear plastic and cardboard boxes that encapsulates all electronics. Jenny pulled out her smartphone, and a small piece of paper fell into her lap. She ignored it and ran her fingers along the smooth edges of her phone. After a few seconds spent turning over her phone, her attention was diverted by her brother, who was still struggling to get through the plastic containing his earbuds. Snickering and rolling her eyes, Jenny yanked the thing out of Riley's grip and easily unfastened the plastic. "See? You don't tear the thick plastic. It pops open like that, you idiot." "I'm not an idiot," Riley muttered with his chin down and he bit his lip. Jenny tossed the earbuds back to him, and as she did so, another slip of paper fluttered out from the casing and fell to the carpet. Riley bent down and picked it up. The scrap of paper was only about 5 inches long and 1 inch in width. Written along one side, in all capital black block letters, was the single word, "Help." As he gazed at it, he saw an identical slip of paper in Jenny's lap and took it. He held them up next to each other, glancing from one to the other. He flipped one of the papers over, and on the back, printed in smaller block letters, was an address. "Jenny?" Riley asked. "What do you want?" Jenny replied, her eyes locked on her phone. "I think someone's asking for help," Riley said, and held up the 2 pieces of paper so that the sides displaying the help message both faced her. "There's an address on the back. It's on our street." Jenny tore her eyes away from her phone for a fraction of a second to glance at the papers. She started laughing. "Riley, no. That's if you need help with the product. Like if something goes wrong, you can take it there. Nice, it's close." "Oh," Riley said, and let his hands drop. He placed the papers, along with the instructions for his earbuds, back in the plastic container and brought everything up to his room. Later that night, their parents went to a Christmas party with some of their friends, while Jenny stayed home and babysat her brother. Jenny had already tucked Riley in, and she was laying in bed, scrolling through her phone, her eyelids drifting closed every few minutes, when Riley burst in through her door. He quickly shut it behind himself and stood with his back against it, facing Jenny, who was still in bed. Jenny started and propped herself up on one elbow to look at her bedroom doorway until she realized it was just Riley. Then she yawned and asked, "Night terror, Riley," as she rubbed her eye and stretched one arm up towards the ceiling. "The papers," Riley sputtered. "They spoke to me." "So you did have a nightmare," Jenny replied, scooting towards the center of her bed and lifting her sheets. "Come on. Don't let the heat escape. You can sleep here for a little bit." "No, Jenny," Riley said, running the last few steps towards her bed and grabbing her arm with both of his hands. "You have to come look." He continued to tug her out of bed. "You didn't bring them with you?" Jenny asked, sighing. She sat up, seemingly unaffected by Riley's tugging. She twisted her arm and easily broke free of Riley's grip. While he stumbled backwards, she checked the time on her phone. 10:30 p.m. Regaining his balance, he whispered, "I'm not touching those things." Jenny groaned, stood up, clutching her phone, opened her door, and began the trudge to Riley's room as he followed a few paces behind her. When they reached his door, Riley stopped and said, "You go in first." She pursed her lips and hung back, her palms growing damp. "Riley, what did that paper say when it spoke to you?" Jenny stepped backwards, farther away from Riley's door. "You're scared now?" Riley said as he encircled his belly with his arms and leaned back against the hallway wall. "I just want to know," Jenny answered as she halfway turned towards him so she could see both Riley and his door. Riley scooted his heels closer to the wall. "It said help us, but it was like a bunch of kids talking all at once and repeating it until it ran out." "You weren't sleeping? You aren't joking with me?" Jenny crossed her arms. "No," Riley replied, and his chin trembled. "All right, let's go in together," Jenny answered, grabbing Riley's hand and pulling him towards her. When he was in front of her, she released his hand, pushed him through the door, and followed immediately behind him. Once a few steps inside, she leaned down and spoke in Riley's ear. "Where are they?" He jumped and pointed towards his desk. Jenny reached towards Riley's wall, fumbled until she found the bedroom lights and flicked them on. From the entryway, Jenny observed the little white pieces of paper they had received in their Christmas presents. In the full light of the bedroom, they seemed less scary, and Jenny let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. She stepped towards the desk and stared down at the papers. They were white, with the large block letters she saw earlier. "I don't hear anything," she said, shaking her head. "Riley, I knew you were such a baby having nightmares. I can't believe you scared me." "No, I didn't. I heard it." Just then, Jenny's phone rang, and she stopped laughing so abruptly it was as if someone had cut the power to her face. She held her phone tighter and checked the screen. It said, "Santa." Still staring down at the phone, she mouthed the words, "It's Santa," to herself, but no noise came out. Finally, she managed to speak. "It's a video call." She gazed at her brother, who slowly nodded his head and said, "You should answer it." Jenny nodded back and answered the call. On the left side of the screen was a painfully skinny young boy about their age who had bags under his eyes. He was seated at a table, facing them, and wearing a red sweater with holes worn in it. His whole attention focused down as he tinkered with some kind of electronic. Without warning, he glanced straight into the camera with penetrating, dark, almost black eyes. Jenny and Riley both screamed, and Jenny dropped her phone. She pounced on it to pick it back up, but the call had ended and her new screen was shattered. "He saw us," Jenny said, her voice shaking. From the direction of the papers came the sound of children's voices. "Help us! Help us!" The sound growing louder and louder. "Oh my God, that was what you heard, wasn't it?" Jenny gasped. Without waiting for an answer, Jenny lunged forward, took Riley's hand, and pulled him out of the room and down the stairs. Without even grabbing their coats, they rushed out of the front door and into the freezing cold. Outside, Jenny ran up to one of the neighbors' houses and knocked frantically. When no one answered, she moved on to the next house, but still no response. The next place was a large brick commercial building with unusually small windows. Her teeth already chattering from the cold, Jenny raced up the few steps to the entrance, tensed her muscles, and pulled at the handle with all her force. The door swung open with ease and she stumbled backwards. Glancing once at her brother over her shoulder, she stepped inside, and Riley followed her. A few more paces inside, and the scent of baking cookies reached her nose. Towards the right, down a hallway, she spotted a dim light. Jenny tapped Riley on the shoulder, and when he looked at her, she placed a finger over her lips and silently mouthed, "Shh," then gestured for him to follow her while she tiptoed towards the bright room. As they did so, the smell of baking intensified. When they arrived at the room, Jenny signaled for Riley to stay out of the doorframe while she peeked around the corner. Inside were a bunch of children between the ages of 10 and 18. When Jenny put her head around the side of the door, one of them saw her and frantically gestured for her to come inside. Jenny stood up straight, scanned the room, and not seeing any adults, entered. One child, younger than Riley even, held up a plate of cookies for Jenny, who absent-mindedly took one. An older child, around 17, rushed up to Jenny. She had a worn, green sweater on and curly red hair, through which Jenny could swear she saw pointed ears. This person smiled at Jenny and patted her on the back before saying, "You're here! And your little brother, too!" Turning her attention to Riley, who lingered in the door, she said, "Don't be scared. You're just in time for cookies." Then to both of them she said, "You're here to help us, right?" "Take a cookie. I made them myself," a young girl said to Riley, who, halfway hiding behind Jenny, grabbed a cookie and took a bite. "Perfect," continued the red-haired lady. "Thank you for coming to help us. Your spots are right over here." She put Jenny and Riley towards 2 empty spots on a long bench. Jenny turned to her. Don't you need help escaping?" "Oh, no. She shook a finger at Jenny. "We do the most important work in the world. When we make toys for all the good little girls and boys for free, we bring joy to millions. But now the population is growing all the time, and toys are so hard to make nowadays, we really can use all the help we can get. That's why we recruited you two." Jenny dropped the cookie when she saw the wrapping paper stacked in the corner of the room. It was the one displaying elves wearing green and red sweaters that had covered her smartphone and Riley's earbuds. Then she saw all the kids around her wearing the exact same outfits. "I don't want to do this. Riley, run, go." But Riley only tilted his head and smiled. "Who are you?" Jenny took Riley by the shoulders and looked him in his eyes. "I'm your sister, and we need to go." She began pushing him towards the door, but Riley wasn't moving. The older child grabbed a cookie off the tray and offered it to Jenny. "What are you going to do that's more important than what we are doing here? Why don't you just go ahead and take a bite of this cookie? I think once you do that, you'll understand." Riley took another bite of his cookie. "They're very good, too. Try one," he said, pushing the tray towards her. "Riley, don't eat that cookie," Jenny said and smacked it out of his hand. Then she pushed the little girl with the cookies, causing the tray to clatter to the floor, and sprinted towards the door. But standing in the frame was a tall man, wearing a red coat and red pants. "Be a good girl, Jenny. Eat the cookie, or you won't get any presents next year," he said, as the elves crowded around her. Several grabbed her arms, and Riley took one of the cookies from the floor and shoved it in her mouth until she had no choice but to swallow. Thank you once again for listening. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.